data, but how do they convert it into intelligence, into knowledge, and how they can run their business. So that was the first piece. The other thing I also found, and I'll come on to this in a minute, was it's not just about data, it's how you use data, how you share information, and how you drive the business behaviour and culture using that knowledge and information. And that's what I really want to talk about today, because there's lots of IT out here, and this presentation is absolutely IT agnostic. This isn't about any particular software package or any particular IT. This is about how you use technology to bring your organisation together and drive change in your organisation behaviours. Okay? So where do we come from? So as I say, our IT was a lot of the problem. So parking the fact that we knew we had data issues, one of the key things that I identified was, as an organisation, we'd given local parts of the organisation budgets for their own IT. And they'd all gone out and bought their own systems. In fact, I went to the head of the IT at the time and said, how many systems do you use to manage the MoD estate? And they said, oh, we maintain 32 systems. So that was good. So I asked for people to do an audit, and we went out and did an audit of those systems, and we found over 100 systems being used. Because some of those systems, the IT organisation hadn't even realised that people had been out and bought and were being used on the estate. What that meant was our data was all over the place. You couldn't join our real estate data with our facilities data. You couldn't join our capital projects data and follow a building all the way through its life cycle either. The bigger problem was when it come to making big decisions on our estate, where do we, for example, big change for us at the moment is bringing the British Army back from Germany. That would be done by people taking data from lots of different systems and then typing it into Excel spreadsheets and manually manipulating the data just to try and get a picture of what we should do. And I'm only going back to 2012 now. So we're not going back 10 years. We are going back in the last 3 years when that's how we were running our information on the MoD estate. Also, because those systems all been designed independently of each other and purchased independently, none of them talk to each other. So actually there was no data transfer from one system to another. So actually trying to join systems together was virtually impossible. In terms of housing, there were 17 different ways to allocate a house because the systems were different in different countries. In terms of when we got a parliamentary question from a minister to say how many houses have we got in the MoD, someone had to manually go for each system, draw the numbers and join the numbers back together again, typically through Excel again. And we've ended up at one point with 40,000 Excel spreadsheets in the organisation just because the IT could not help the organisation run its business. Where we're trying to get to is something that actually integrates all our business together, brings all the different arms of our business together across international boundaries and allow us to integrate our information, our systems together as one. Many people will talk about multipliers. We honestly believe that if you add 2 and 2, you can get 5. Because actually it's not just about, if we get a health and safety incident on our estate, we want to know, is it a particular contract? Is it a particular type of building or a construction type? Is it a particular use of that building that creates that health and safety incident every time? So actually it's not just the health and safety incidents of interest to us, is the maintenance program being done properly? Is it the usage? Is it the user, etc.? So we can actually start joining all our information together. And that's really powerful. So key thing for us was we set some key principles. The first one was we would rationalise all our systems down, and we decided to try wherever possible to take a single system view. Okay, I think that was ambitious. With this single system, I think we'll probably end up with 10 key systems. And also another big challenge for us has been getting the reporting and the analytics out of that in a way. Is there one system that can do everything? But we have largely moved forward, and I'll talk a little bit while. But as of today, in that 3 years, we've decommissioned 35% of those legacy systems, and there'll be another big decommissioning project this year. The other big thing for us was we would standardise our processes. So could we actually go out and buy a system that would actually allow us to actually do the workflow for our business? So previously, as I said, everyone did different things differently. Houses was allocated differently in different countries, etc. What we've done is actually embedded our business processes into the tool. So actually, how people do their business can only be done one way. And interestingly, one of the things, I had a conversation with a previous client in America in the Armed Forces, and I said, how do you make sure your users use your system? And they said, that's quite simple. If they don't use the system, they don't get any money. All the money's in the system. So therefore, if they want to order a piece of work, they have to do it through the system. If they want to bid for money, they have to do it through the system. If they want to lease a building, they have to do it through the system. And that's the policy we adopted, because the business will follow the money. So actually, when you're trying to drive change and cultural change in the organisation, while the soft side is really important, and I'll come to that because some of the lessons we've learned was we didn't spend enough time on the softer business change, You can do it to a certain extent through IT as well, in terms of forcing people to use the IT in a certain way, and that will drive how the process is led. So that was important to us. The other key one for us, being the MoD and being part of government, DIO is mandated on what corporate systems we use, because we are part of the Ministry of Defence, and rightly so. So our commercial systems, our financial systems, our HR systems, were all going to be continued on the rest of the MoD systems. So if we wanted to bring population on a state from our HR system, we need to be able to interface that with our infrastructure management system. If we wanted to know where we spent money, what contracts have we raised raised orders against which contracts, again, that has to be done with our commercial systems. And the other big thing for us, 70% of our data is actually maintained by our industry partners, our soft FM, our hard FM partners, etc., our real estate partners. So that's really tough. So how do you bring all that information together into one environment, help you make proper informed decisions on your estate, but have data you've never had visibility before? And actually, we found also our contracts weren't particularly smart, because we never defined data standards on our industry partners either. So they could go out and hold data whichever way they like. So when we tried to bring it in-house and use it, it was often very difficult and again, required an awful lot of manual effort. So integrating those systems together into a single approach was really important. And that probably for the first time, we started to take an enterprise architecture view of our business and understand how the business fits together, not just inside, but also across our supply chain and customers. The other big one for us was the user base, and I think this has grown. So we went in this, and I call this the conspiracy of optimism. You always go into these things you'll do things quicker, you won't need as much money, and you won't impact as many people. We originally thought we would end up with 2,000 users. Today, our estimate is closer to 6,000. And I can honestly see that growing, because actually we're seeing more of our industry partners coming into the system these days as well. And we're working with them to see how we can take that forward. So in terms of benefits, there are some big benefits in this. We believe we can save over a 10-year period up to £170 million through the use of the system. Okay, and these are budgetary estimates at the moment. But in terms of gas utility, we currently have two tariffs on our utility supply. We have a fixed price tariff and a variable tariff. The variable tariff, unsurprisingly, is at a higher price rate than the fixed price. Our ability to put more of our utility spend onto a fixed rate would drive big savings, particularly if you think we spend £350 million a year on our energy. Our ability to forecast in the past has not been as good because of the data issues. What we're starting to see with our infrastructure management system is we've now got all our consumption data through 20,000 metres into the system, and we've now turned on forecasting. And we can start to forecast, look at trends, energy consumption trends, and forecast more accurately what our future usage will be. That means we can start moving our energy onto the lower rate, and that will deliver big savings for us. The other area is in, and I'll take something, this is typical MoD, so I'll take some of the acronyms out here. Single service accommodation, SSSA. This is where we use substitute single service accommodation, open market rentals. Currently, the MoD has 135,000 bed spaces. It has 50,000 houses. We also have a number of open market rentals, but we only have an armed force size of around 120,000. So it doesn't take a genius to work out the math there. We've got massive over-provision on our living accommodation to our armed forces size. What we're trying to do with our infrastructure management system is pinpoint those areas where we've got over-provision, how can we rationalise our estate down, and how can we drive down savings in open market rentals. Previously, each accommodation block was allocated by the local QM or equivalent. So he only ever had visibility of his block. Once his block was full, he would raise a certificate that allowed the service person to go out and take a private rental. Where in the future, and where we are today, is having a system that gives total visibility of available beds across a whole area, and we've got it down to actually, it does, using mapping tools, travel time to duty. So it'll actually say what beds are available within this travelling distance to the place of work. So that actually we can allocate, and it does to entitlement. So it'll say for this rank and for this gender, because we don't mix males and females in single blocks, and actually the size of the room you're entitled to depends on the rank you are in military terms. So the system we're using actually does all that calculation and returns the bed in that area. That will significantly reduce our dependence on open market rentals. The other big thing for us is that all those beds that we're not using, there's a cost to maintaining those to us. So there's an awful lot of opportunity here to actually reduce unused beds and actually start demolishing some old buildings that we probably don't want to keep and are beyond economic repair anyway. So another big area for savings. and again, we've talked about SLA in around those two big figures there. The next area, and not so big, is in staff costs. As I said earlier, there's a lot of mandrolic processing of information, lots of clerks doing bill payment, etc. If we can build the electronic interfaces with our bill payment systems, etc., we can remove that human, and the human key in error, to be honest, and actually start getting systems to talk to each other. That doesn't mean to say we'll reduce our staff numbers, but we can better put that resource, because we're always short of resource, where it can have more benefits for the organisation, rather than doing mandrolic bill payment. The big issue for us is also in those 100 systems. So how much was it costing previously to run those 100 IT systems, paying licensing and maintenance? Actually, the savings, while big, wasn't as big, because if I tell you some of those systems were older than the mobile phone. Some of our systems we were using to run our estate were over 25 years old and were out of support and out of contract. So actually there was big opportunities there to refresh those as well. But there were nonetheless some big savings, £10 million worth of savings over that 10-year period in decommissioning systems. And the other big thing for us is if we hadn't replaced them, at some point all those systems would have needed replacing as well. So there was a cost avoidance benefit there in terms of avoiding future IT spend on those 100 plus, replacing those 100 plus systems. So the savings are quite big, but none of that really comes into scope when you think about the business benefit. Because actually the power of having all that information at your fingertips means you can make really big strategic decisions on your estate. As I say, we've got some big initiatives running on our estate at the moment. We have a footprint strategy looking to significantly reduce the size of the MoD estate. We have the Army coming back from Germany, and we need to accommodate those in our UK estate, as well as other large strategic initiatives. So having the information to make properly informed decisions will actually enable decisions which are into the billions of pounds in terms of potential savings on the running of the MoD estate. Although they're very difficult to directly attribute to any particular software package. It's just having that business intelligence that allows you to do that. So what do we use our integrated system to do? Well, actually, we're using it to run our whole business. So from the strategic programmer planner, so our customer goes in the system and raises their requirement. This might be, we'd like to build a new aircraft carrier. This is going to be the biggest aircraft carrier we're ever going to have before, but we need a dock where we can dock it, because currently it's so big we haven't got anywhere to dock this ship. So that requirement would come in through, and the program in the frontline command would raise that requirement in the system, and that would go into our strategic planning and programming office, and it would be prioritised in the overall defence requirements portfolio. A requirements manager would capture the full requirement, and it would be scored, and there would be a decision. They'd get initial gate approval to actually take that project forward. Once all that's agreed, the system would then transfer that over into our capital projects module. So the requirement, we're not rekeying the requirement now. It started from the customer. It's just grown as we go through the whole process. It would then get handed over to the project manager. The project manager will be allocated, who will be allocated a budget. Remember I said earlier about money in the system. We've put all our financial delegations and approvals in the system, so you can't actually move a project forward unless you've got the proper financial delegations and approval to do so. So it's important for us, because that makes sure that people are acting within their approvals, and it's quite empowering. Because actually people don't need to be nervous. Someone making decisions that I'm not equipped to do so. They're quite clear on what they can do. So the actual requirement would go into a project, and we would deliver the project. The finance manager and the finance team will allocate money to the project. So there's money available to the project manager to do their work. And the commercial officer will set the contract up, and the contract will be visible in the system, so that any money spent against the project and any work's done, key milestone payments, etc., are pulled off against the contract. So this is all in one system. So if we ever want to see what's happening and what stage the project is, where the bottlenecks are, where there's any delays, we can follow the whole process through the workflow in the system. That's fine. So we've gone away, we've built the project, we've built a new building, we've built this super dock that we can now park the largest aircraft carrier we've ever built against. Typically for us in the past, and I think this is similar for a lot of FM systems, the handover from project handover to the FM people who've now got to maintain it is often quite tricky. And do we ever involve them straight up front? So actually quite in our requirements team, that's when the FM people would get involved straight up front, because obviously you've got cleaning, you've got catering, you've got all the through life maintenance costs and everything, the whole building's going there. So they would have an input at that stage. We're really looking at building information management as being that vehicle to actually do the handover from the project into our FM community. Because that COBE file that comes with the building information management tool will actually transfer all the information we need about that building to generate the building in our IWMS in Triariga. So we're looking to use BIM to generate that building and all the attributes about it, how many floors it got, how many rooms has it got, what's the electrical system, what's the heating systems, where's all the pipes, pumps, etc. So taking that master data file, integrating that into our system and putting that into our process is really key. Because that way we can make sure that what these FM people in terms of facilities management, soft FM, catering, cleaning, they all know what they're going to be taking on, and that's handed over properly. We then move into our service facilities management, and we're using the tool in a number of ways. One, actually our business model is we don't actually lay bricks, we don't fix windows, we don't fix dripping taps ourselves. We have a very heavily contracted model for our business, and that's through some large regional prime contracts. What we actually do is manage the task management. So what we're doing is managing the contractor. So for us is when any task above £2,500 in our world has to come to the authority for approval. Okay? So any task, so there's a base rate that they can do work within. Anything above needs to come to us, and that's done through Triariga. So our industry partners are currently logging straight in. Some of our industry partners are logging straight into Triariga, raising that need above £2,500, and that flags up to our facilities manager on their as an email and on their front page that says you've got a notification, you've got a piece of work to approve. They go and approve that, and actually that then sends a notification back to the industry partner. They can get on with the work, or they can't if it's rejected for any reason. But it will also explain why it's been rejected. We can then track start date, we can track the end date, we can track track the final outturn costs as well. So we can get the full task view as we go through the system. Similar in terms of projects where we're working not as many tasks transactionally, because we do hundreds of thousands, if not lots of millions of tasks a year. In the projects world, the milestone payments are all tracked through the system as well. The next area for us is in terms of utilities. So also in terms of, so not only now have we got the costs of building the building, have we got the costs of doing the facilities management on the building over its through life. We can also start bringing in what's the cost of operating the building in terms of soft FM and in terms of utilities. So we can actually work out what's the full cost of ownership of this asset. One of the big things we've started to do, and we're working really hard on this, is something called facility condition assessment and facilities condition indexing. So actually one of our measures is what's the total liability of the building through its remaining life against the capital replacement costs. And the simple way I look at that is if I had a car and it was going to cost me £30,000 to replace, and actually I go to the garage and they say, sorry Mr. Lemon, it's going to cost you £10,000 to fix your car, we found loads of problems with it. I would have a big decision there. Is it worth spending the £10,000 on the car, or should I dispose of the car and spend the £30,000 on a new one? That's similar to how we're looking at modelling our estate. So at what point does the asset become beyond economic repair, and we should look at disposing, refurbishing, or building new? And we can model that now because we have all the information in the system of what we're doing. I say now because we're still rolling this out. So some of the things I say is some are ambitions, some are actually what we can do today. But I'll come to where we are on the journey in a minute. So we've got our utilities in the system. Space management is really important for us. And as I say, one of our big areas we're targeting are the bed spaces. So someone can go in and requisition a bed on our system. So they put in a requirement for a bed space. And we are training up allocators who will allocate the bed through the system itself. Therefore, we can see utilisation on our estate. We started with beds. There's no reason why you can't use the same functionality for desks, for car parking, for any space, conference rooms, etc. We've got that live currently at 7 sites, and we're piloting that out at the moment, and we'll roll that out to over 350 sites later on this year. I'll come back to timeframes in a minute because none of this all sounds really easy, and it's quite painful, but I'll come back to that. The allocator allocates the bed, and then actually we also look after the leasing of the properties as well. So a lot of our properties we own, a lot of our properties actually we lease. We also have an awful lot of properties, particularly cottages, farms, etc. on our training estate, which we lease out to others, private individuals. So in our property module, we manage all that. We manage all our agreements, our waivers, etc. on the estate, as well as all those lease payments, rent payments, and etc. through the tool as well. And the other big thing for us is what happens at the end of the asset life. How do we dispose of it? So we use the projects tool in the property management to actually manage the disposal of the asset, the clean up of the land afterwards, the sale of the asset, etc. So as you'll see from there, we go through the full cycle. And once we've disposed of the asset, again, it might be we need to replace it with a new property, and around we go again. So that's how we've tried to bring our organisation together through a single integrated workplace management system. As I say, in our world, we've brought Tririga, but there's a number of different tools out there. If I come on to sort of where we are, and this is where we come into behavioural change. So our vision was quite clear. We set our principles out front, and we had an end game to head for. In release 1, we rolled out our portfolio. We brought all our assets, and actually that was a big challenge because what we actually did was spend 18 months before we even purchased a tool in actually physically eyeballing every asset we had on the MoD estate. Massive undertaking. We found all sorts of anomalies. We had people listing trees as buildings. We had flagpoles as buildings. We had lampposts as buildings. We had some confusions. I remember one building where someone had painted a white line up the middle of the building, and someone said, well, that's 2 buildings. So we sorted out all those anomalies. So when we actually went live with the software, we could load good data. And it does rely on good data. And that's always been one of our biggest challenges. How do we sort the data problem out? Utilities, sounds nice and easy. We connected to 20,000 meter points. That's good because we had energy management systems we could link to. However, a lot of our estate doesn't have good meterage, and we're relying on local energy managers to put data in directly. We're also relying on people who fill out Excel spreadsheets and feed that into our system as well. So we still have multiple ways of putting data in, but we recognise that. Of course, we want to get everyone onto a single approach eventually, but it doesn't hurt to actually get some quick wins going and get some things under your belt and get it moving. So we've been quite open to that. SLA, single living accommodation bed space allocation. This is where I think we have one of our biggest problems. What we thought we were going to deliver and what our customers wanted was 2 different things. Our frontline commands, the Army, Navy, RAF, they wanted a system that had all the rules and policies built into it so that the allocator didn't have to think particularly what they were doing. They could say, I'm looking for a bed, it's for a major, it's at this site, and he works here. They wanted the system to determine what beds were suitable for that person. We'd gone into it, well, it's just a bed, it's a bit of space. As long as someone allocates it, we'll know that bed's allocated. They wanted to put the rules in the system. We should have talked to them earlier and actually fully understood what their requirements were. So we went into a major redesign. As of today, they've signed it all off now, and we've built all that rules into the system, but it's probably taken us a year longer than we anticipated. So a little bit about engaging your customer and understanding their requirements there. The other big thing for us is we really annoyed them. Because we designed all this system and we went live with it on the first site. It took 20 minutes to do the first bed search. So you imagine your first contact with this new IT system that we've been selling as this is going to be really great. We're going to run our whole estate off of this. It's going to work really well. 20 minutes to run the first search. And that was the standard average time to run a bed search. So we've had to work quite closely with our supplier. As of today, we've got that down to 8 seconds. And that's my sort of lesson from this. IT problems you can get over. But once you've upset your customer, that is a lot more difficult. Because once you've alienated them, how do you bring them back on board? And that's taken an awful lot more. The amount of effort to fix the 20 minutes to 8 seconds has been minimal compared to the amount of effort in actually bringing the customer back on board after that 20-minute failure of doing that first search. So that was a big lesson for us. Again, with our capital projects, we had our previous capital project system wasn't good. And the director of our projects at the time said to me, Peter, I'd really like to do projects up front. Naively, we said, let's keep the customer on board, let's meet that need. Capital projects is one of the most difficult modules you could release on a program. But we decided to put it right up front, big mistake, without knowing the tool we were rolling out at the time. So we first went live, and also the business was going through a major change. If I say to you, at the same time as changing our technology, we did a major organisational change, and every one of our staff had to go for a post-mapping and apply for their own jobs. And at the same time, we redesigned all our processes as well. So it was really difficult to say where was the single point, anchor point you could base everything on. I'm pleased to say as today, we've reorganised the organisation, our processes are bedding down, and we're now we're continuing to roll out our technology. But our time frame to roll this out was 18 months. So we purchased in 2012, and we thought we would roll this out by 2014. You'll see up there, we're now looking to roll this out by 2017. And that's a realistic time frame. It was ever going to be a 3-year program. We were just trying to be too ambitious. If I move on, so release 0 went reasonably well. We released some functionality. We were getting to learn the new software. Our customers were getting to learn how it didn't work very well, particularly as well. And we managed to turn off a number of systems. Actually, that was a bit false because a lot of our systems, when we actually went out and spoke to our people, they didn't use them anyway. We were paying licensing and maintenance on systems that we could have switched off. So there were some quick wins in there and some soft wins. But we didn't have the information to make that properly informed decisions that we could have turned them off earlier. So this is all about information. So when we got into release 1, so we stopped. Sorry, let me come back. So we did release 0 and we hit the pause button because we had all these problems. We didn't have the right data. We hadn't properly understood the customer requirement. And it was taking us much longer. And what we actually realised was we hadn't got the business ownership and buy-in in what we were trying to do. And I think we heard earlier about how do you get the senior executive involved and how do you get that ownership. And that was really key for us. So we actually reset the whole programme at that point. That meant costs went up, meant a lot of to-ing and fro-ing with the Cabinet Office and the Treasury for me to actually explain why our costs were going up and how we exchange that. But actually it was absolutely the right thing to do because if you're not prepared to fail fast and learn and move forward on the right footing, then you're just continuing to make the same mistake and the problem gets bigger and bigger. So it was really the right thing to do and be strong enough as a management team to say stop, review, take stock, have a pause, look at what we're doing and then talk to all the stakeholders and readjust the programme. And that's what we did. And I think that was a really brave decision at the time, but I absolutely today stand by that being the right thing to do. We then set the programme across a much wider time frame. And as of today, we went live in release 1 last November. So we rolled out our capital projects. We went live with real estate in Cyprus and Gibraltar. We continued to develop our portfolio. We put our utilities forecasting in, so consumption was in release 0. We put forecasting in. We've turned on service delivery, and our industry partners, some of our industry partners have already started going in the system and are now recording their tasks in the system. And we've actually, with one industry partner, we've built the live interface with their own facilities management system as well. So they don't have to key in the system. We've got the two systems talking to each other. Bed Spaces is now live at 7 sites. And as I said, in September, October this year, we'll start rolling that out across a further 300 plus, 350 plus. We've got our approvals and delegations in the system. They need some fine tuning, but they're there. People can start using the tool. And we're starting to do some capital projects and program management. So we are seeing quite some big steps forward. We've now moved into detailed design on release 2, and particularly this year, all our lease administration system, particularly Horizon that we use for managing most of our UK estate, all that estate will migrate into our information infrastructure management system as well. So we'll see a big change there as well. And then lastly in 3, and I think 3 is the important bit because we also realised there was a build here in terms of we were trying to switch on functionality without thinking about the sequencing. So there's no point doing really detailed reporting, analytics tools and modelling and programming tools if you haven't got the source data in and you haven't worked out how your business works and the flows. So release 3, I believe, we will be spending a lot more time on the icing on the cake, which is how do I get that information out and how can I analyse it and model it that makes me make really good decisions on the running of the estate and drive down the costs on the estate. So release 3 will actually be that icing on the cake. But a lot of the operational data as of today, certainly all the asset data we've now started to collect in the system, or we've got in the system we can use. So I sort of put up some lessons there in terms of what we picked up along the way. Because as you can see, it wasn't straightforward. I think we've made massive steps, and actually we underestimated the size of the challenge we were taking on. I think the first one for me is business ownership. We brought people into design workshops at the start of a module, so it might be real estate, it might be projects, and when we finished design, we let them go. We should have kept them people all the way through to be the people who actually represented their business and deployed it into their business. We didn't have clear business ownership. Early on, it was thought to be an IT program. And clearly, this is a business change program because this is fundamentally changing the way we go about doing our business. So we actually shifted business ownership. We started to bring people out from the business and we brought them into the main delivery team. But actually not full time. One of the lessons we learned in Release 0 is if you take people out of the business, if you take them out of the business for too long, they become part of the centre. And people from the business don't associate with them anymore. So actually what we tend to do is bring them out for 2 or 3 days a week, depending on the level of resourcing at the time. But they're always going back into the business and they're talking to their colleagues and making sure that the business are informed. So getting that business ownership is really important. The other thing for me was about how can I give the business better empowerment about how they can influence the system. So we actually started allocating budgets back out to the business. In the early parts, we had loads of changes. Typical IT program, lots of change requests. Part of the reason we had lots of change requests is they weren't paying for anything. So whatever they asked for, they didn't have to worry about the cost of. So actually giving them their own budgets, actually controlled that thirst for change, and actually said, you can have change, but this is your budget, you prioritise what you can do within that budget. That's been really helpful because actually, not only has it sort of contained some of that change, it's also given them the empowerment and the ownership of the design and development of the system. So they now take far greater ownership. The other big thing on business ownership is about senior leadership ownership. So now the senior responsible owner for the programme is from the business. It's not me as the IT, I owned it at one point, that was wrong. We transferred ownership of the technology over to the business because the business it's a business change system. It's not about an IT programme. So that was really important for us as well. Data is a massive issue. We've now created a standalone area for data because it's such a big challenge for us. It's not about just having the IT. You've got to work out where your data, you've got to clean your data, you've got to prep your data. Quality of data is important, particularly if you think about us through a multiple landscape of our own organisation and all our industry partners and customers. But the other thing is you've got to work out what do you want to use that data for. How are you going to analyse, what's your business intelligence, etc. So data is a big piece for us, and we didn't spend enough time on data. Language. We brought in a new language into our organisation with this system. So all our people, we had the contractor coming in talking one language, and our people were talking something different. And quite often I was sat in a room and they'd all be talking about the same thing, but no one could understand anybody. So actually getting a common lexicon of language, terms, etc. was quite important, so we were all on the same page. There's nothing more frustrating for someone if they're saying something they don't believe they're being listened to or heard, but actually it's because no one understands the language they're using. So that was important for us. And I think the big one for me, and the big lesson for me coming out of this, is culture. You can't just change your processes and your systems and think you'll change your business. You'll go some way, but it won't change your whole business. It's about how do you change the mental model, how do you change how your business thinks and works. And you can't do that for them. And this links really strongly across to business ownership. If you give them the business ownership, they'll change, because they'll change themselves because they can see a benefit, they can see an improvement. If you try to do it for them, they don't see that benefit, they don't see that improvement, they just see someone trying to impose something on them. So actually, the mental model and the culture and the business ownership are really important, because actually where my sign of success is where I step away and the business say, we can run this ourselves. They don't need that support, they don't need all those IT skills, they can get on and run it, and that's where my real measure of success will be. The last one, and you'll see from where we had to stop and repause, you need to change at the pace the organisation can handle. There's no point trying to say I'm going to deliver an IT programme of this size in 18 months if the organisation just can't move at that pace. Particularly if you're redesigning all your processes and redesigning all your organisation at the same time. That just doesn't work. So a big one for me is be realistic. The conspiracy of optimism always comes in. Any IT project I'll take forward now, to be honest, typically we get told to add 50% optimism biased. If it's IT, I'd probably add 80% these days. And that's just from experience. It typically, whatever you think it will be, add another 80% and you probably won't be far off in terms of if you're looking to change your own IT. That would be my experience in terms of IT. So I think that was my last slide. So open to questions.
Questions for Peter?
My name's Tim Slade. I work at JLL. I'm in IT. You spoke about the fact that 70% of your data is held by your partners and your suppliers, and the fact that because of the contracts you had with them, they were holding it in formats and ways that suited them and didn't necessarily suit you. So have you driven change with that now? Has that actually changed, and how have you gone about that? How receptive have your suppliers been to that?
I think certainly we're starting to have a dialogue with our suppliers now. I think the way we work today with all our information in islands of data held in different contracts will change going forward. And that's certainly the sort of conversations we're having with our supply chain at the moment. Our vision would be to a more collaborative environment where we share our information through cloud-based working, etc. And we can actually plug in an industry partner into that cloud. We can share our information both ways, because we've got information the industry partner needs as well. But at the end of that contract, next contract comes along, we can unplug the first industry partner and plug the next one in. There's an awful lot of costs in our industry in cost of bidding for work and exiting out of our because we have very, very big hundreds of millions of pound contracts. So actually, if we can make that easier for our supply chain as well in terms of how do they plug into our business and how do they unplug from our business, that's a win on both sides as well. And our industry partners are actually welcoming that approach in terms of acting in a more collaborative way than what we do today.
BIM, which for me has always been a bit of this holy grail between the through life cycle. How far you are in terms of that, either as a vision or a reality?
So in terms of vision, the government has set targets for all public sector organisations to achieve BIM level 2 by this November. Where are we? I think we're starting to understand what the impacts of that will be for us and what it means. I think as a business, we need to understand what BIM is going to be in our world. So BIM could be very large, it could be quite small. And I think we need to work out where does BIM add the best value for us as an organisation, and then how do we apply that into our organisation. So I think we're still in the early doors. We've, in terms of software, we've just been added to the beta test, so we can integrate between the BIM tools and our infrastructure management system, so we'll have the software bridge in place. But I think from a business position, this isn't about software, it's about the business being able to articulate how do they want to use BIM and what do they want to get out of it, more importantly, because that should set what we do with BIM. And I don't think we're working on it, we've got work streams set up and they're working on it, but are we 100% there? Absolutely not at the moment. There's a lot of work to be done to determine what BIM will mean for us. But there's not a lot of time given November's not far away. Going back to setting impossible timelines.
Yeah, the question I had, Peter, is obviously you're part of the MoD. What's the rest of government, national government, doing?
It's a good question. When we looked at this, I went and visited health, education, home office, etc. And actually, they were probably working in the same world as what we were previously. And actually, I think the UK industry largely works this way. Typically having a number of best-in-breed solutions, real estate system, an FM system, a project management system. The challenge is how do you join them all together? I think the level of maturity, some organisations have actually rationalised down to a few really good systems and put some integration in place. And as we know, Kevin, there's companies out there who will actually put integration in place. And also, some actually have still got that legacy of very old, out-of-date systems that they're relying to run their business on. So it's a very mixed picture out there. And I think government's no different to the rest of the UK construction industry in terms of where they are on their technology maturity, in terms of integrating their workplace. So it's a very mixed picture.
All right, thank you. Anything else for Peter?
Hi there, Dean Parsons of Gleeds. I've previously delivered something similar for a blue chip company that I worked for. They're at the point now where it's 10 years old. It was internet based, does very similar things, links all the workplace management stuff together and the projects. It's been disbanded because it's old technology. How have you guys considered future-proofing this solution?
Good question. For us, if we can get the data, it's all about data. So one of the things I would have loved to have done is come from a position where we had good data, we had mature systems behind that we could migrate that data from, because that's been one of our biggest challenges. So what we want to make sure is, as long as we do things, and some of my data colleagues are in the room with me. So we've developed an enterprise data model. We know which systems, which tables our data sits in. We know what format it's in. We know where the source is. So actually, if we have to switch over to a different system later on, we're in a much more mature position today because we understand our data, we understand how it's structured, so we could migrate it from one system to another. We didn't have the luxury of that before because we had 100 systems. We didn't know what data was in them. It was all in different formats, etc. So our cost of change would be much lower in the future. I won't say there won't be no cost of change. There will always be cost of change. Obviously, we made a heavy investment in the tool we've got today. So and you'll see the benefits are over a period of time. So we wouldn't be expecting to change any time now, but clearly we have got our eye for the future. And actually, from my point of view, I don't think any of us in this room can say what IT will look like in 5 years' time, because that's my big challenge. I don't like doing IT budgets for beyond 5 years because I don't think anyone can predict the IT landscape beyond 3 to 5 years anyway. So for me, it's been make sure it would be much easier for us to migrate what we've got today into a future tool than where we came from, because it was impossible from where we came from.
Thank you very much, Peter.
The data,
Oh, sorry.
The data that you currently got, you say it's all about data. Is that data in a position for the MoD to make the monumental investment decisions about the troops coming back and building? I think it is down in handover. We hear about the potential of closing down Middlewall. These are very substantial real estate decisions. Is the data, is there going to be a catch-up here, or is somebody going to say, gosh, didn't realise probably need another 20 quarters for X for majors, Y for kernels, and whatever it is, and all that,
Yeah.
is the data can they catch up with that?
No, as I say, we're data rich. We've got lots of data. It often needs a lot of manual manipulation. So I wouldn't want to paint the picture that the MoD didn't have data that it couldn't make informed decisions of. It did. It just took an awful lot of effort to reach to that final decision, and the time to analyse that data took a lot longer. I think what we've got today, particularly in terms of assets and where our assets are and what we own and where it's located, certainly in terms of our portfolio, all our data's cleansed. We've probably got the most accurate picture we've ever had of the MoD estate now, and we're using that data to make our big strategic decisions around that planning. Certainly, as our data quality will always improve, and I think data quality will always improve. Well, you may think you've got good data, but there's always be room for more. So while I wouldn't say our data's really poor, it's very difficult to make informed decisions with at the moment. It requires a lot of manipulation. So if we wanted to know the cost of running a building, we could go to an industry partner and get that, but we have to go to our industry partner to get it today. In the future, we'll be more mature that we can get it out of our own systems. So the data's available, it's just how you access that data, and you still then have to bring it together in some means. And we're being more intelligent about how we do that.
Okay.